to Turf Business Question Time, which is being held here at St George's Park, the home of all England national teams for football training. And we've got a panel with us today that we're going to discuss a number of items around the turf care industry in general and what it is facing currently. Today we are joined by two apprentices from St George's Park. We have Liddy Ford, who's here, and she's been here about 2 years now, I think, yeah. We've got Connor Birtles, who is related to Gary Birtles, I found out earlier, so we might find out a bit more about that over coffee. Meg Lay, who's become a little bit of a personality over the last few months in the turf care industry, who is currently working for Gloucestershire County Cricket Club, over from New Zealand, and was part of an all-ladies ground care team for an international match at Edgbaston quite recently. And then the brand new principal and CEO of Myers Co, Wes Johnson, who literally is 2 weeks into the role. So let's get straight into things. Our first question is going to come from Lee Marshall-Safe from Eton. Lee.
Land-based colleges seem to do a lot for people in the industry. Do the panel think land-based colleges do enough to attract the next generation? And if not, what more could they do?
Well, I think welcome to the turf care industry. Wes, you want to take that one straight off the bat?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Lee. I think it's a really good point. Ultimately, for us as colleges, for you as the industry, we need new entrants. And I think, again, chatting to colleagues earlier today, it's realising that there are multiple entry points. So again, last week at MySco welcomed about 1,800 new students onto campus, including residential, but also obviously work with a whole range of young people, whether they're 14, 16, 18, or whether their career changes later on in life. And I think the important thing is, and this is my experience, and my experience is land-based and general further education, the way that this really works is when there's a completely joined up approach between industry and education. Okay, the best message we can take into schools, into a variety of settings, these are the fantastic jobs at St George's Park, at Eton, elsewhere, and this is how you get there. And I'll give you sort of a personal experience on this one, Lee. Not only am I a sort of principal at MySco College, but I'm also the parent of a young person that's just done a sports turf apprenticeship as well, in terms of, so I really understand from a parent's perspective that what parents and young people are looking for is confidence that there are good jobs at the end of a qualification. But particularly in this post-COVID era, what we need to be is really clear about how a young person or an adult career changer moves from wherever they are now, whether that's year 10, year 11 in school, whether that's just finished A-levels, whether that's potentially, as I know some of our panellists have been down different career routes and then changed and then gone again. It's really making sure that we minimise barriers to that one. And I think that the thing that we need to realise is young people have got choice. That there are lots of great opportunities out there. And I think the commitment from me is what I know works in the past, what I know will work together, is putting time in this together to really showcase the industry. Okay, what's the real incentive to join that qualification, to join that apprenticeship, to upskill, to reskill, to change careers? Because there are fantastic jobs out there, and they genuinely are. And that, as a parent, convinced us that was absolutely the right pathway for my son at 16, who's now fully employed within the sort of the golf side of turf care. So I think, absolutely we've got a wider participation, and I think it's great, just chatting to Meg before we started the panel today, of course, is what we've also got to do is attract 100% of the population, not 50%. And I think, again, that's something that we really need to work on together.
Okay. Connor, I mean, you're coming through as an apprentice, you're actually on placement via Myers Co, that's your college that you're working with.
Yep.
What was your route into the industry like then? Was it something that you were aware of?
No, a bit different to most apprentices come through school, right? I left school 18, went into a normal job, did that till I was 24, then decided I needed a career change. We spoke about it a little before, like gardening, like football.
Yep.
The two kind of came together. And then I stumbled across the opportunity here. It just happened to be that I stumbled across it on looking on the FA career website. It wasn't like I knew much about apprenticeships or anything like that. I just happened to stumble across it and then applied and lucky enough to get it.
So no awareness until you stumbled across it. Liddy, was that
pretty similar.
What you do?
Yeah, so I had a background in agriculture and then I did a sports science degree. So I kind of merged both of those, and then similar to Connor, just stumbled across the job advert, and yeah, that's how I discovered it.
Okay, so well, as you say, we need to bridge that gap between schools and the colleges. How do we do it?
Yeah, I think the challenge is it comes down to careers advice in school in particular. You know, both of Connor and Lydia have just talked about the fact that there was no awareness that there were great jobs within the Turfcare industry. So again, a big part of our role as colleges with our employer partners is literally going into schools or using a variety of means to really celebrate the industry. And of course, every industry is in the same boat. One of my other roles over the last 5 years has been a director of the Chamber of Commerce. Every industry that we talk to is suffering people and skill shortages at the moment and are really stepping up in terms of promoting their industry as a fantastic career. The challenge we've got is that there isn't the sort of notion of a national career service anymore. So every school is responsible for their own careers. But of course, this is also working with a whole range of providers. You know, you've heard in terms of the journeys that colleagues on the panel have taken today. You know, we need to make sure that we're celebrating this industry in all forums because, again, you know, people don't necessarily do a linear career anymore. They don't start off with a clear vision that I want to be and retire in the same role. It's this idea of building a portfolio career. But I think, you know, certainly from what I pick up, and again from my own experience as a parent, is a general lack of understanding about the fantastic opportunities and the fact that you can progress right up to master's level, you know, whilst working on the job. You know, there are huge opportunities, not just for those entry point careers. And Connor made a really good point earlier about the notion of an apprenticeship, because of course apprenticeships have changed hugely. It's not necessarily now about 16 to 18 year olds. Of course, that's still important. But of course, an apprenticeship now can be a higher level apprenticeship and a degree apprenticeship, which is becoming more and more attractive and is becoming the norm in many industries at the moment. So I think, again, that broader understanding, what I would say, going directly back to Lee's question, is colleges won't be able to do this on their own. It has to be in partnership with employers. You know, it's really important. And again, just to slightly broaden it out a little bit more, is post-COVID, what employers report back to us is the key area that we need to develop is employability skills with our young people. We can develop the knowledge, we can develop the skills, we can develop the behaviours, but actually particularly in this post-COVID era, it's making sure that people can work as part of a team, that they can problem solve, they can have those difficult situations, they can communicate. And again, colleges can't solve that in isolation. That's really where apprenticeships, work experience, placement comes into. And again, think about that transition from young people, let's say, that have chosen either a sports-related subject or a land-based subject, is making sure that they've got that flexibility to move across and broaden those opportunities. But it has to be in partnership. You know, it really does. And again, the commitment from me as, you know, what is Europe's largest sports turf provider from a training point of view is, you know, I'm here because I want to work with the industry, and this isn't a new concept for me. This is what I've sort of really embedded throughout my career, is colleges and employers working absolutely hand in hand for the greater good of the industry.
Okay. I know from conversations I've had with a number of people, grounds managers, some of them actually in this room today, they have tried to reach out to schools in the local area and they found it very frustrating. They're just not getting through the door. Now, are you saying that you're now offering to help them do that?
Without a doubt, but I think also we need to be creative, because what we can't do is engage with every different school in the country. So what we need to be thinking about is for those employers and how we engage with local schools, you know, in terms of that local progression route. But also what I'd just sort of remind colleagues of is of course parents, carers, guardians are still key influences in terms of decision making. So more and more so we need to think about how we use technology, how we use social media to sort of potentially bypass some of these roadblocks that we've got to get this message to young people, to parents, to adult career changes, you know, through a variety of routes. And as I say, there's no easy magic button to do this, because every school, you know, thousands across the country are responsible for their own careers, advice and guidance, you know, and again, with the best will in the world, if every land-based college and every sports care employer worked together, we still wouldn't be able to cover that. So what we've got to do is get that message out through a variety of ways, but direct engagement with those key influencers, whether it be careers, whether it be schools, whether it be parents, whether it be, you know, through a variety of means, you know, that are accessible, is going to be hugely important. The challenge we've got is so many other industries are in exactly the same boat at the moment, and people really are sort of stepping up their game in terms of, you know, how they recruit. I think that, you know, what a lot of organisations have realised is relentless advertisements in the paper isn't necessarily the way to go to sort of, you know, to attract those young people. And again, we've heard the stories this morning. So I think we've got to be quite innovative in what we do. And I think, you know, events like this, but trying to get that out more broadly, Martin, is going to be hugely important. But again, the commitment from me is you know, that's what we do. That's our job, our job as a college, going back to Lee's question, is to make that connection between whatever somebody's starting point is and a great career.
Meg, it's not, well, actually I'll come to you first, Con. I mean, you mentioned football, like gardening. Oh, there's a fit. But you weren't aware that there was this whole industry and what was involved in it. And I think a big part of what we've got going on is that, you know, and it comes up at every event that we have like this, we need to raise awareness of the industry. So I personally feel that we've got sports that people enjoy. Meg, you love cricket. That's an attraction for you to get involved in your job now. That is a route to get people interested. And I know we've got all sorts of sports clubs, and from the very top to the very bottom, where you can get involved as a volunteer, whether that's on match days at, you know, Arsenal or Tottenham helping out on the ground, or whether that is in cricket or rugby. But then there's also the professional route. What I was actually going to come to you on, Meg, is in New Zealand, is there more awareness of this as a career, or is it pretty much the same?
I think it's the same, but the difference is in New Zealand is that there aren't the job opportunities. You know, it's such a small country, it's a small population, we've only got maybe 5 professional stadiums in the whole country. So there's probably less than 30 professional jobs. We don't have the sort of private school elite sports places either. So there isn't the opportunities in private school. So in terms of the industry, it's minuscule compared to over here. Over here, it's, you know, you could get a job doing anything within the industry. So it is very different. I don't think they're struggling for staff in the same way, but I think that's purely because there's less jobs.
Okay. We'll now move on to attracting, you know, a particular sector, which is the female side of things. Obviously, Meg, you pulled together and were at the forefront of kind of getting a team of women together to run a match at Edgbaston. I think you probably got pretty much everybody apart from Liddy involved, and I think you're going to get involved next year, aren't you?
Yeah,
so that's great. Were you shocked when you started looking?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, because I'd seen that the statistic was 2% of the industry is women, but I think that's rubbish. I think it's far less. I genuinely think it's about 0.1. Maybe women are just better at answering surveys, I don't know. But you know, I went to GMA pitch advisors, I asked schools, I went to different clubs and just came up short. And you know, these are pitch advisors that were seeing, you know, 20, 30 grounds, and they said, sorry, there's no woman on my circuit. So I ended up, I used social media to recruit the team, and you know, it's worked out well. I've got a couple of the girls here today, but it was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be, and a lot more challenging than what it probably should have been.
From a turf business event point of view, it's certainly the biggest gathering of women other than our staff, so that's great, that's refreshing. In terms of attracting or being an attractive role to women in general, do you think there is a real barrier to it or not?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I haven't had a single negative experience with anyone in the industry. And yeah, it is mostly men, but the men in the industry are just fantastic. Like everyone's so welcoming, so knowledgeable. There's a real lack of ego. You know, it's because I'm obviously far from being an expert at the moment. I'm able to learn from the best because they want to help, they want to recruit. And I say that at every opportunity possible. The men in this industry are fantastic, and I haven't had a bad experience. So I think in terms of barriers, it's a false barrier, really. You know, we are supported, we are welcomed, but there might be a perception that we're not. And so we need to get rid of that perception. And that's why I say at every opportunity possible that it is an industry for women, and we will be welcomed.
Liddy, I'll ask you to pick up on this. You know, your particular path in, you come similar to Meg actually from an agricultural background. Yeah. What was your route in? How did you discover Turfcare?
Just through a job advert online. That's my first sort of experience of it. I thought I wanted a job that was outdoors, and I just looked through that way and then discovered it here. I think I didn't know anything about sort of what Turfcare was or anything like that before I started, but obviously I had more of an understanding of machinery and stuff like that, so that sort of helped me through. But sort of from cutting pictures, marking out, none of that before. So certainly learnt on the way.
So all three of you, none of you went, I want to be in grounds care or turf care. It was just it kind of happened
Yeah.
because of your personal circumstances, and you saw a position, or you heard about a position from some people you were sharing a place with, yeah? So, okay. So, your first day coming into St George's Park, I think
Yeah.
the only girl on the team, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that feel?
It felt a bit intimidating at first. I think it's more just the history of what's been before and sort of figuring out how we're going to go forward. And some things might need to change, some things didn't. And it was a process, but I feel like we've sort of got there. Yeah, and I think what Meg said is that women are more than capable than doing this job. I think it's just seeing representation in the field throughout the whole turf business industry. Even stuff like reps, don't really see many female reps or anything like that. So I think it's more just sort of seeing people that look like you or are like you make you sort of believe that you are part of it, if you get what I mean.
So, when you speak to people and you say what you do, is there surprise?
Yeah, I'd say so. So, but not just because of the female aspect. More like what is that like? You know, they don't know about the industry. They don't know about the jobs. So it's sort of a double whammy in a sense.
Yeah, it's the invisible industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get the same reaction, Meg?
Yeah, I think there's there's always a lot of interest. I've found there's a lot of follow-up questions, isn't there, like as to what we do. Yeah, I think that is one of the big challenges of the industry, is actually publicising and promoting the job and making it a bit more glamorous in a way.
Okay, I mean, you've come in at a very high-profile, prestigious venue, you two, and I think, you know, I can see working for England or a big cricket club or a big football club might be attractive, whereas if you know, it's something that's lower down in whatever pyramid you're looking at, do you think that makes a big difference to people wanting to get involved?
I mean, I can speak for myself. Like, I wasn't majorly into football when I started. I mean, obviously, as I drove into the site, I was really impressed and stuff like that. But there was no sort of pull of football for me here.
Right.
So I know Connor's into football, so that kind of brought you. But for me, it was more just the site and sort of what we're working towards that pulled me towards it. Felt like we were, as a collective, moving towards a bigger goal. So maybe that's not the same at a smaller club, I'm not sure. Because obviously we're involved in the National Football Centre as well.
You a football fan now?
A little bit.
Yeah.
The Lionesses.
Yeah, the Lionesses, yeah.
Okay. Has anybody from the audience got anything else they'd like to ask or add to that? Adam, sorry, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, do you find that clubs are doing enough to help recruit apprenticeships into the industry? As we found the apprenticeship, and we found it through the foundation scheme, which linked up with the job centres where we were lucky enough to find a great candidate.
I mean, I think clubs do nowhere near enough to recruit people. There's such an untapped market. I don't understand as a cricketer why we don't have 17, 18-year-olds coming and helping us on match days with covers. It would make our lives easier, and it would, you know, just get them in for work experience, and that's a day on the job. They get free front row seats to an international game. Things like that need to be happening. And I think clubs can do. I can only speak for cricket, but they need to be doing a lot more, because the current state is that. When I applied for the job, I've got an agricultural background, that was fine. If I didn't have an agricultural background, I would have still walked into the job. I could have come from a supermarket and gone straight in. You know, that's sort of how desperate we are in cricket anyway.
Unfortunately, Meg, what's happening is people are walking out and going to work in supermarkets, from what people are telling me, so that's a shame. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think just a couple of points, and thanks to Adam for just teeing that one up as well, because it's really important. I think going back to Lee's question a little bit earlier on, is, of course, one obvious starting point is that captive audience that's represented in the room. You know, the fact that, you know, what we've got is some of the biggest spectator sports in the world represented. And again, you know, just from my perspective, I can't ever remember seeing Turfcare jobs advertised in programmes or on the screens because what you've got is a natural interest in terms of people are there at that venue because they've got a passion for the sport or for the activity that you're facilitating through your fantastic Turfcare. And I think that the challenge is, of course, a number of other industries have been through this process, and it's quite interesting that Lily and Meg are both from an agricultural background, and that's a big part of my background. And that's an industry that's been through a huge transformation over this last few years, and quite often now it's a 50 mix on an agricultural course. So again, in terms of how industries evolve and maximise the fantastic potential that we've got is hugely important. But I think again, working with that captive audience, and again, absolutely, within football, rugby, cricket, and all the other sports that are represented, I think now it's a much more representative audience. So that would be a great starting point.
Okay.
I say one thing, specifically with apprentices, not to get too political, but I think it's a byproduct of a failing education system. If I look back to when I was at school, so you kind of ended GCSEs like 15, 16, it was send kids to sixth form, send them off to uni, and that's the path that you're pushed on. You're not taught too much about getting a job or an apprenticeship. It's more about just pushing kids towards universities and stuff. And I'd imagine it's not an industry-specific thing. I think it's a population problem across every industry. Like there's not enough people for jobs, and there's not enough noise around these jobs and apprentices and stuff like that. So I don't think it's too specific, but it is a wider problem that is a bit out of our control. I'm sure there's more that we can do ourselves, but.
Yeah, and Connor's touched on absolutely bang on, and from a technical education point of view, which is sort of my bread and butter, is that there's a drift back now to technical education, and one of the key hooks to that is the fact that you can progress to a degree through on-the-job training. And again, for families, particularly in a cost of living crisis, that compared to potentially going to university with a debt is hugely attractive. And we've got all of that pathway within the sports care industry. People can progress, right through the ranks on a work-based type approach. And I think again that's something that we really need to celebrate, because again, one of the tragedies for me is for when young people have taken that guidance that Connor's just described and end up halfway through A-levels and realise it's not for them. They quite often have to swap at that point as well. And again, there's another market at 18 where young people have done A-levels, but then university's not for them at that stage as well. And I think what we need to be doing is really selling the industry at all of those points, 14, 16, 18, and right throughout, adult career changes is hugely important.
Yeah, when I applied for this job, I was 24, and I assumed I wouldn't get an apprenticeship because I was 24, but it's not a problem.
No.
But to me, I thought you have to be 21, 18, 16 to get that apprenticeship. So there needs to be a bigger voice around it. It's a good way of getting people into the industry, for sure.
So our next question is coming from Ben Connell.
The question I had, how do we get our employers to recognise the salary bands that are set by the GMA and bigger? We're finding it difficult to recruit. Wages is a big issue, bringing people in. Generally bringing guys in now who don't have any qualifications or experience, because we can't attract those that have already got qualifications and experience. So how do we get the employers to recognise that and to pay the recommended wage?
One thing we need to point out here is Bigger and GMA haven't got anybody here with us today. They've both got prior appointments that they can't get people along for us. So we're going to have this conversation without their input, but I think that might actually free the conversation up a little bit. I guess I'll come to you, Wes. Is that something you've experienced in your previous role, that this is an issue, that you can't get a take-up from the employers of the salary bands that are being recommended?
Yeah, I think salaries hugely compounded, absolutely, as I mentioned earlier, by the cost of living crisis. And again, it's our biggest risk as a college as well, in terms of how we attract those fantastic teachers, tutors, lecturers, assessors for the future. When the industry salaries are so turbulent. I think what I've seen in other industries is actually out of necessity, something has to change. And again, we could sit here for the rest of the day and talk about inflation and all the drivers for inflation, or not, as the case may be. But ultimately, as that pressure grows in terms of employers being able to recruit staff at the right level with the right level of skills, obviously developing your own is becoming more and more popular in terms of doing that one. But something has to give. And as I say, just from my chief exec role rather than principal role, is in terms of the business of every college in the country at the moment. We're going through that in terms of actually where do our salary bands need to be able to make sure that we can attract those people. When you're delivering subjects like sports turf, like agriculture, like engineering, you know, the huge pressures in the industry, all of which, so as colleges we compete against all of the industries as well as other education providers to make sure we can get and retain the best staff, and ultimately that's pushing, you know, the business every day in every college, as I know it is within the industry. But ultimately, I think what more and more employers are realising is the cost of not doing, in terms of, you know, the workload on other members of staff, those constant vacancies, you know, the quality of the product, quality of the experience, that vulnerability to losing staff, because ultimately, you know, it's a competitive landscape out there as well. So I think, you know, the imperative is absolutely there, but again, I think the challenge of sort of the idea of salary bands, whether that's within a college, within an employer, is becoming more and more tense because of that competitive nature. People are having to push the boundaries to get and retain the best people.
It's not all about money. It's important. You're smiling, Liddy, so I'm going to come to you. What's the most important thing that makes you get up and come into work in the morning?
I think it's about enjoying where you work and who you work with. I think that's one of the biggest things, because you can be earning great money, but if you don't enjoy it or who you work with, then to me that's not, but it might be my personal view, but that wouldn't be how I wanted to spend my working life.
Okay, but you've still got ambitions that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
You know, getting a house and
yeah. I think it's about finding the balance. Obviously that's going to be different for different individuals, isn't it? You know, some people have more responsibilities like children, etc., where they might not have the luxury to say, well, this role pays more. Yes, it may not be where I want to be, but might not have the luxury to choose that necessarily. So I think better pay is obviously a big part. Sort of, could we have the best of both worlds? Would be great, wouldn't it?
Meg, I mean, you've come from a bit of a different culture. Has New Zealand got a bit more of a work is more important in terms of making you happy than it is in terms of paying the bills?
Yeah, I think so. It is. It's vastly different here. I came from when I was doing harvesting, and I was working probably similar hours to what I'm working in cricket. But the difference is that you're getting paid by the hour, and it's good money. Whereas here, you know, you're expected to work a 75-hour week, but 35 of those are unpaid, and you might get it back in loo time if you're lucky. It's so yeah. I mean, it is. Obviously, I'm still in the job because I love it, and I love working outside. I love working with a team of people and being around professional sport. But that's not enough of a draw card for a lot of people, and it's something that I would even have to consider in the future. You know, like if I have a family, is that something that I want to be doing? You know, giving up my whole summers and spending 80 hours a week at work. So I think the pay is the single biggest issue in the industry, and I'm hoping that it's a matter of the pendulum swinging at some point. And it's happening already in cricket, where you only have to turn on the TV for 5 minutes and you'll hear the commentators complaining about the quality of the pitches.
Yeah.
And you know, at the moment it's us that's sort of taking the brunt of that, but it can't be long before it's the governing bodies that need to start sticking their hands up and saying we need to do more. So yeah, the pendulum will swing because it has to, but it's about how we can get it to swing back faster, and that's something we all need to work on, I think.
Ben, can I come back to you? I mean, you asked the question. The driver behind that, is that because at Ipswich you're struggling to get the club to match the aspirations of the association, shall we say?
We're certainly on the bottom end of the scale. But for us, it's also, there's a lot of golf clubs around, although we haven't got many football clubs about. We're all scrambling for the same few. And we've got 2 or 3 clubs locally who are paying within the bigger range. And of course, the attraction is to, you know, losing staff to them. And our recruitment, we're not taking staff from them to Ipswich. And we've had a very good apprenticeship route at Ipswich, and we've got many of us have. I mean, we've got 6 staff at the moment who are doing a level 2 qualification, and 2 that are doing a level 3 out of 12 staff. So I mean, that's always time away as well, because they're spending a day a week doing college work. So we're losing time off the pitches, and then of course once we get them trained up, the temptation is then to go off onto other clubs who are paying better money, whether that's in at schools or golf clubs. So geographically, we're in quite a difficult position where we are, and say that there's many clubs that are picking from few staff.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to add a question or make a point? Yeah, Dougie.
Sorry, it was just reference Meg's point there on the commentators, etc. Don't you think there could be a conversation between ground staff and the commentators, and then explain the problem to then try and get the industry across in a different way? So in essence, the commentators then start discussing the problems off the playing surface, which then highlights what the trade is around.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's really important that the head groundsperson at any ground goes and speaks to the commentators for any TV games. Like, go and introduce yourself, explain about the pitch. I mean, I was lucky enough at Edgbaston, I did a pitch report with Nick Knight, and I think that should be the norm. I think the head groundsperson should be there doing the pitch report, as opposed to a commentator that has just rocked up on the day and is all of a sudden an expert on the pitch. There needs to be that collaboration. So that's something that I think really does need to be worked out with the broadcasting partners. Ensuring that it's a good way to publicise the industry as well. But yeah, get the commentators on side, because they're the ones with the public voice, aren't they? I agree.
And it's always, well, not always, but 99 times out of 100, it's when there's a criticism that the surface gets mentioned, not how wonderful it's looking. I think I can recall one time that I remember hearing a commentator say a pitch looked great. Yeah. I'm going to ask you to open up your apps now, guys, if you can. And on the home screen of your app, there should be like a tile that will say live polls. If you can click on that. And if we can put the poll up on the screen, please, Abby. Okay. So this is what's called a word cloud. All you need to do into that is to type in a couple of words or one word that answers that question. How do we attract more talent into the industry? Whether you feel that's salaries, advertising jobs better, or making the industry making people more aware of what the industry is about. And then we'll give you a little chance to put those in, and then we'll pick up on that. Just so I get a sense of what this actually means, because it doesn't give me numbers here, could I just by a show of hands have anybody put something to do with salaries or money? Could you just pop your hands up, please? Okay. And anybody put anything to do with raising awareness? Okay, so raising awareness, I think, is probably the one. Can I just ask, why did you put raising awareness?
Yeah, I've just been searching for an apprentice myself, and I've taken someone on, and I actually got quite a lot of applicants in, and interviewed some really good applicants, and I think, yeah, I must have just touched the right places.
Right, okay.
I think it's awareness.
Where did you advertise?
We put one for our club,
yeah,
out across Northampton, and also with Myers Co, they put one on UK Gov website.
Do you know where you got the most response from, or was it?
It was at 50-50, I think.
Yeah, okay. So that raising awareness of the role was through advertising, but did Northampton, as a club, help you attract people? Is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, no, they were really, really helpful towards the grounds team there.
Okay. Who else has recruited recently? So Brad, you just recently recruited as well. How did you go about that, and was it an easy task?
Definitely wasn't. I mean, Lincoln's in the middle of nowhere, so no one really wants to come in. We were, again, fairly fortunate that we landed on one bloke out of our entire recruitment process for a normal groundsman. But this person was far more qualified than what the base role was going to be. So we basically created a deputy role for him. And then the way I basically got it through the board was, the way I advertised it to them was like, on a match day, if the restaurant manager doesn't do his job, we run out, we lose money on burgers.
Yep.
The bar manager doesn't get enough stock in, we lose money on pints. But if we don't do our job, there's no ticket money, there's no game basically.
No restaurant sales, no bar takings.
Yeah, so all them other little areas all fail because we haven't done our job. So ultimately that was my biggest ploy to them, and I managed to get a pay rise for all my lads in the past year, purely based on the fact that the amount of hours they put in, we're the first ones in, last ones out, and just making them aware of these things, because I don't think that, they turn up on a match day, especially the board members. The chairman turns up on a match day, I always have a chat with him and he always says everything looks great, but he has no idea of what goes into it.
Yeah.
So actually it's exposing our powers that be as to what goes into it. And when I explained all the things that we do, when I then asked them for a couple of grand extra to all these lads, they were happy to help me out.
So that's a bit different away from what we're talking about in terms of raising awareness, but that's about, in terms of why outside, that's raising awareness within your own club.
Yeah.
And helping you make the case. So
Yeah, but
this is what it's worth.
Yeah, if we weren't able to get that extra funding, we literally would have had no one, because we had people that were applying that I think were just applying for any job.
Yeah.
So we were really struggling.
Okay. So that's Lincoln City. If we come back to, I'm going to come back to you again. Meg. Do you have an understanding of what your board and your club knows about what you guys do?
I don't think they know a lot as well, and I think Brad's dead on there. Actually, that's going to be a big part in pushing salaries, is making sure that they are aware. And to get there, you need strong leaders within the grounds team. You need them to be able to push your case and explain what it is that we're doing, and not be afraid to say that. And yeah, I think that's huge, is getting people who can push it at the top level, and not be afraid of those boardrooms and that sort of thing.
Okay. Can I ask you to go back to your apps again, please? And just going to change the poll there. And this is preparation for part 2, actually. We're coming towards the end of part 1. Could you just, again, give me what you think is the single biggest challenge or major challenge facing the professional turf care sector today, currently in September 2023? Final point we're going to just wrap up on now. And what's coming out of that, again, is recruitment and retaining staff. So I'll come to you in a minute, Wes, because I think maybe you can pick up on some of the stuff that I can get from the other guys here. I'm going to start with Liddy. So you're attracted to the role here. Do you see a career path for you that's going to retain you in this industry? Or do you think to get where you want in your personal ambitions, you might have to go out of the industry to earn enough money to do what you want to do with life?
Unfortunately, I think right now, my opinion is leave the industry. Maybe not short term, but long term. I think as you look at it right now, there's just not the progression that you can achieve elsewhere, which is a shame, I think, because then it just adds to this issue of losing qualified staff to not only other places, but another industry completely, which then is very difficult to replace.
I'm just going to come along the line. Connor, are you in the same position at the moment, or do you feel you can see your career in front of you here, or in turf care?
Yeah, I'd like to. The question is, can I afford to cut grass the rest of my life? Probably not. Like, I'm okay at the position where I am, where I don't have responsibilities of kids and so forth, but I love the job and I like the idea of having a career here, but could I afford to do it? Probably not. I want to just circle around money all the time, but that is the fundamental problem there. But I'd like to, yeah.
Okay, how does that make you actually feel without getting too deep?
Well, it's a shame. Again, I don't know whether it's an industry-specific thing or whether it's a problem in general, but I don't know whether there is room for progression. Again, I've not been in the industry that long, so it's difficult to know how easy it is to progress through the ranks. I guess the higher up you go, the easier it is to stick around. But yeah, it'd be a shame to have to leave it just based on money.
Okay. We know the question that's coming to you, Meg. Is it any different for you?
I'm similar to these guys, to be honest. I will stay in the industry because I am passionate about it, but I couldn't sustain the role that I have at the moment. There's no way. As soon as if I were to have kids, I would have to leave.
Okay. I think most of our audience have actually come up and have got to a position. So 2 weeks in, Wes, now then, solve that one for us, yeah?
Yeah, but I think, Martin, you've got to come back to the 2 points that are on the screen. And I think as I've been listening and obviously absorbing what's been said today, that raising awareness, my first response to that one was raising awareness of the career. But I think equally important to that, and actually the enabler to recruitment, is raising awareness within the industry, and just in terms of how important the roles that are performed by the fantastic people in the room today are undertaken, because in effect you are enablers to multi-billion pound activities, and for me, wearing all of my hats, from an education point of view, I'm happy to put as much time into that as we possibly can, and potentially think about a little sort of working group or something, Martin, that we can bring together to think about that one. But I think that the more I've listened, the more I realise there's a real selling job to do on the importance of this within there. And I think just one point I was going to make a little bit earlier on, as a parent of somebody that's entered your industry, the thing that really hit me and the thing that's keeping him in the industry is the sense of pride in terms of what he does. And I'll just a little anecdote on this one. He came on one day and he said, Dad, our golf course has been on Golf Mates, please watch it. And he was absolutely beaming with the feedback that they got from this YouTube piece, that that somebody had been around his course and had really complimented him. But again, from a fan's point of view, when I turn up at the City Ground, the first thing we look at is the pitch and say, "Crikey, that pitch is in fantastic condition." Okay, that's that really hits home. And again, we know the technical nature of your industry now, that what you do with the turf impacts hugely what happens on the turf, and I think there's a huge piece of work to do just in terms of the importance of this industry as a facilitator for fantastic things. And the fact is, we've got a captive audience, people that turn up and either participate or spectate, for the wonderful activities that you facilitate is hugely important. So I think all of the component parts are there, but raising awareness, without a doubt, will lead to recruitment. But it's not just raising awareness outside of the industry. It's going back to the points that my fellow panel members have said this morning, in terms of actually really valuing what you do and therefore valuing those fantastic people who are already part of that industry.
Connor, I'm sure you get a thrill out of the fact that Harry Kane plays on a surface that you've prepared, and you probably get a thrill about anybody playing there, but that's not going to keep you in the industry alone, is it?
I worked some match days at Wembley, the FA Cup semi-finals, and that, I've never worked a stadium experience before, and that was like the proudest moment that I've had, really. And I think the passion is there for somebody when they come in, but it probably wears thin when you don't feel valued. Like, if you don't feel valued in the way that you're paid, in the way that people think of you and your role, that eventually wears thin to the point where somebody will just leave. Like, it slowly goes from being a career that you love to eventually being just a job, and then you go.
So the point there is career progression. How do we solve the career progression then, Wes?
Yeah, I think again it comes back to it being valued. It's coming back to the points that have been made around the room. In terms of the education and skills piece, all of that framework's in place. As I say, people can progress right up to a master's qualification in sustainable sports turf management and everything in between. So that career progression in terms of the qualifications, the self-fulfillment. But what I'm picking up this morning is actually the barriers a little bit more fundamental to that in terms of those internal opportunities for progression. And I think again, we can't skirt around the issue of pay. And as I've said several times already, particularly when we're in a cost of living crisis, and people have to be able to pay the bills, and of course being pride in what you do, that wow factor in what you do. But I think as fellow panel members have said, is ultimately, you've got to have those life aspirations as well outside of work, and again, work to live to work. There's a balance there. So I raising awareness, Martin. That's what it comes back to.
Meg, what's it going to take to keep you then? I mean, in an ideal world, if the money was there and it was just enough for you to, be comfortable, would you stay, or do you need to be very comfortable?
No, I would stay. It's a great job, and I love the industry. I love everything about it. It's the pay that doesn't match the hours. It's not even necessarily the pay. I can live on the pay if it's 5 days a week, 40 hours a week or whatever. But it's the complete lack of work-life balance which doesn't match the pay at all. But I mean, like I said, I will stay in the industry because I love it. I don't know in what capacity it would be, but it couldn't be sustainable on just a groundsperson level.
Well, at that point, we've got one further question coming in. So if we could get the.
I've been in the industry for like 30 years now, and this is a tale as old as time. And we keep saying recruitment, staff retention, all the rest of it. I think if we recognise the business model that we're trying to deal with is flawed, we're trying to bring professional attitude to an amateur organisation. So most golf clubs, cricket clubs, sports clubs throughout the land, probably 90%, forget all the big fellas. They're run by people who are old because they have the time to do the job because they're retired. They don't kind of operate in the present world. They don't realise you've got to pay £4.50 for a bottle of ketchup now. Things have gone up. Everything is expensive. And we're trying to bring business decisions to something that they're seeing as their hobby that's run with emotions. And that is the big kind of problem, I think. We're fighting and banging our head against the wall constantly because we're dealing with amateurs in an amateur organisation. The chap behind me before said we had to get it through the board. We had to get round the board. We shouldn't be having to get round things and con people and kind of cajole and move. We should be presenting professional arguments and discussion points to professional people.
To be fair to Brad, I think he did. He wasn't conning anybody.
He did, but it's the we always think we're getting away with it as professional turf managers to the board. We got away with that. Yeah, we managed to get the pay rise, and I left because they basically said to me, you've reached your glass ceiling at this golf club. You can't go any further. That's then my decision to decide what I want to do with my career. And they said if we were going to recruit again, we wouldn't go for somebody with qualifications or the experience. But that's my pride I want to do in my career, to further my professional development, my career, my qualifications, things like that. And I think sometimes it does come down to making a choice. I now have to move on from this role, like any job. But it's sad that we can't get to the officers of the club who are the amateurs and allow them to understand things in a professional and business-like fashion.
Okay.
Not a question, more of a
statement. I'm not sure if anybody on the panel here has got anything they'd like to come back on that with, but maybe we'll move on.